Hello again, it's Jonathan at the piano lesson. We're going to do a lesson today on combining uh, tetrachords with chords. In other words, we're going to use the tetrachords as a tool, as a means to make learning chords easier. And in general, the thing I've learned about learning is that when you're learning something, it's important that you learn the right things in the right order and in the right amount. So I can't stress enough how important it is to be able to think in terms of a group of four notes, a four-note scale, tetrachord scale. 5 notes are too many, 3 notes are too few, 4 notes are just right. And that way, the information that you take in becomes meaningful and it becomes manageable. And you can build. You want to be able to learn in such a way that whatever you learn becomes a component of something else. So it's like a building block. And learning is the hardest when you don't have that, right? When we're learning by rote, we're learning arbitrarily. We all do this because we don't know what we're learning. So, let me get right to it. So, because I know that some people find learning chords kind of overwhelming, learning scales overwhelming, all of this, and it shouldn't be. It's really not that hard. And honestly, you're only going to play as well as you know scales and as you know chords. But more importantly, those terms are kind of semantics. The chord is an outgrowth of the scale, and the scale is kind of a result of the chord. I mean, they're both the same thing. So here's what I mean. One of the most important things to know is your diatonic chords, all right? So various ways to learn chords. Typically, we start with like triads, all right? And this is that's the scale. If you skip notes, you harmonize the scale, you get thirds. If you skip again, you get triads. And there are 7 different chords, and practically speaking, those are the chords that you're going to use in that key, in that particular key. Now, learning all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chords in all keys, and D flat, and D, and E flat. I mean, that's E, right? That's important. So let's take just the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did that right. Okay. Just take just the first 4 notes, right? C, D, E, F, right? That's the major. That's the major tetrachord, right? And we can build chords on that, all right? Using notes of whatever key we're in. In this case, we're in the key of C, so we'll go up and down, right? That's as much as you should learn in a day, or in a session, or in a, in one. I mean, you could be practicing 2 hours, right? But that's one concept. Now, you would go to the next tetrachord, right? G, A, B, C. That's the second half of the scale, and you could finish that out. G. Right? So you have 2 concepts. Here, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, right? Here, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then C major. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Our Roman numbers, uppercase or major chords. 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to 1 again. So you have this, C major, D minor, E minor, F. And then you have G, G, A minor, B diminished, C. Right? Those two concepts. You could do the same thing starting on C. C, this tetrachord, right, functions as the lower part of C, and it functions as the upper part of F. So the F major scale, right, and the C major scale both share this tetrachord. Now, here's the difference. If you are creating diatonic triads, well, that's all well and good, but the chords are going to be a little different. In C, they're that, right? In the case of F, G, C, D minor, this would be E diminished, right, and F. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is rather than C, D, E minor, F, it's C, D, E diminished, F. That's the distinction. So you have two possibilities that can map over that major tetrachord. You have the C, D, E, F, C major, D minor, E minor, F major. That would be in the key of C. Or you have C major, D minor, E minor, E diminished, and F major. Again, because we're not in the key of C anymore, we are in the key of F. All right, but that makes learning those groupings a little bit manageable. So you use this group, right? You change this chord when you're in the key of F, and you use this group, right, when you're in the key of C. Right. The next step is learning seventh chords. Okay, so the diatonic seventh chords. So we're going to add one more note, the seventh, right? C major 7, and we go up the scale. Right? That's what we mean. Those are the diatonic 7 chords we add. Or if we were in the key of F, right? That's what we would have to play. All right. It's just an added element that we have there. So C major, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, D, F, A, C, E, G, B, D, F, A, C, E, C, E, G, B, D, F, A, C, E, G, B, D, and F, A, C, E. That's the 4 chords. Okay. That's in the key of C, right? If you want to play in the key of F, well, then you have to change some things. You have to make B into a B flat, right? Because we're in the key of F now. That's the upper. It's the upper tetrachord of F. So make this into B flat. Right? That would be B flat. So it'd be C7, D minor, E minor 7 flat 5, F major 7. So it'd be C7, right? D minor, E minor 7 flat 5, and F major 7. Right? Also called half diminished 7, the circle with the the line through it, half diminished 7. Again, trying to make and playing broken chords and block chords. Okay, so we started out with just these three notes. We built triads, and we built seventh chords. Just on that group of 4 notes, okay? Practically speaking, as a musician, those are the chords that you're going to end up using, all right? So if you have a limited amount of time, why not practice the things that are going to make the most difference actually playing a piece of music? Now, again, we're talking about all of the things we're talking about. We're talking about diatonic harmony, right? Diatonic meaning in the key, notes that are in the key. In Greek, dia means through, tonic means notes. But so we're using the notes of C, or we're using the notes of F. That was a mode, a C mixolydian mode. But in any case, that's the difference. But practically speaking, that's the difference. Now, let's go to chromaticism. Okay, let's go to chromatic. Passing chords. These are the infamous chords that our friend Barry Harris always used to like to talk about, and of course they were around long before him. Really, George Shearing was the guy. George Shearing was the guy that really kind of made that sound, the block chord sound, the harmonized sound, and to my ear. I just feel like that makes the most sense as a pianist. And if you listen to a lot of Barry Harris's videos, setting aside the technical part of it and, all of that, his main criticism, which I really agree with, and, is that piano players often don't sound like piano players. They sound like trumpet players, or, they're playing these single lines all the time. And it's kind of, it's very limiting because, it's like you have this Ferrari in your garage and you only take it out, you drive a quarter mile down the street to get a carton of milk. Like you never take it on the track, you never really use it. So that's the whole fun of playing the piano. And really, jazz piano probably was at its apex in the 30s with the stride pianists, with the James P. Johnsons and the Art Tatums and Willie the Lion Smith and who are we talking about? Eight Misbehavin', names on the tip of my tongue. Fats Waller, where they're playing the whole piano. So here's how you do it. Okay, here's the chromatic part. And we'll just, there's more than one right way to do this, but let's just take something that Barry Harris might do. So he would say, here's our diatonic triad. You add one note, which is the 6. That's C6, okay? Then the next chord would not be diatonic. It would be chromatic. So it would be D, F, A flat, and then probably C flat. Diminished. D diminished 7. C6, D diminished 7. C6 in first inversion. E, G, A, C. Right? It's the same chord as this, right? You're just taking the low note and putting it up here. That's all it is. And the fourth chord would be F, A flat, C flat, E, double flat. F diminished. Okay? F diminished. Why is it double flat? Well, here's F major 7, F, A, C, E, F, A flat, C flat, down a half step. This would be flat. This is double flat, right? But it would sound like this. Now that's all you have to practice, just those 4 chords, okay? That's it. Oops, put the wrong chord already. Okay. Could that work in the key of F? Well, there's no B natural in the key of F, right? So we'd have to probably, right, in the key of F, we'd start with an F6, F6 diminished, F6 in first inversion, and this would be diminished. The 4th chord would be diminished, B flat, and then again we would have F6. So if we get this B flat chord here, I mean, that would complicate things a bit. Give me a second here. Oh, there's our chord. Right. So the E, we would have a diminished chord on, right? And the D would be that. It would be that. And we really couldn't. There we go. So the pattern is slightly different now. Slightly different because we have an that extra note. Oh, sorry. Here we go. That's 5 notes, right? We've added an extra note in there. So that if we want to use this group of notes like we did earlier in the key of F, it doesn't really work anymore. We have to add an extra note. That works fine, right? But what's the Barry-Harris scale is, right? He adds that between 1 and 2, he puts that half step in. Okay, so that's kind of what we'd have to do in that instance. Let me write that down for you. It's a little modification to our conventional tetrachord. We can still call it a tetrachord. We can call it anything we want because it's our dime, isn't it? But it's still bound by a perfect 4th. Okay, it's still bound by this perfect 4th. But C, D, say D flat, D natural, E. So it's 5 notes bound by that perfect 4th. I'm not exactly sure what one would call that. But that's a modification of our major tetrachord. And take any major tetrachord, then add that. All right? So right over here, F6 in first inversion. Right? Then, just for the sake of it, we'll call it D flat diminished. Right? And then D minor. It looks like D minor 7. It's also at the same time it's also F6 in F6 in third inversion with the D in the bass. Either one, take your pick. Okay. And then let's just call that E diminished. And then we're at the F6. So that's what it looks like. F, A, C, D. No, pardon me. C, D, F, A. There we go. That's our F6. Okay. And then we have the D flat. I'll tell you what, let's call it C sharp. It's an easier spelling. It's good you kids are seeing this as I'm doing it. C sharp, E, G, B flat. See how easy that is? That's a lot easier spelling. The other one would be about harder. And then we have this, D, F, A, C. And then we have this, and I think it's useful to call it E diminished because of that half-step relationship. E, G, B flat, and D flat. So 5 chords, but again, contained within that perfect fourth, all right? Right? That's your homework. Like that, you do just that much. You discipline yourself to limit what you're practicing, okay? And to understand why you're doing it. You're doing it because what we just did is based on that perfect fourth. One has 4 notes, one has 5 notes, one functions in the key of C, one functions in the key of F. So what is the lower part? What would be the lower part of that? Well, it would be that. F6, G diminished, F6 in first inversion, B flat diminished, and then F6 in second inversion. That's what that would look like, that lower part. I'll just write it up here, and you know what? I'm going to write it. I'll write it again, a little bit clearer, and I'm going to write it an octave higher. So we'll just pretend we're doing it up there, right? F, A, C, D, F6, G, B flat, D, E. That's G minor. Excuse me. D flat. What did I do here? And F flat, right? That's G diminished. F6, G diminished. F6 again in first inversion. A, C, D, F. Okay. And then B flat diminished. So that would be B flat, D flat, F flat, and A flat, excuse me, A double flat. That's B flat diminished. B flat, D flat, F flat, A double flat. If you want to call it A sharp, be my guest. Why you could spell it A sharp, C sharp, E, G. It's an easier spelling, but why wouldn't I want to spell it like that? Well, maybe because we're in the key of F, or I'm thinking of the F scale. But being that this is the chromatic passing chord, probably an A sharp spelling might make more sense. You know, I hope I'm not boring you too much with the spelling nonsense, but I really am a stickler for it, and I feel like it's just excruciating. It's really important to understand the spelling and grammar of music, because otherwise you're just going to be mixed up. You know, you're just going to be A sharp, C sharp, E, and then G. A sharp diminished. All right. A sharp, C sharp, E, G. That's the same chord, just spelled differently. F, G, A sharp. Well, you know, and then you have to go to a C, right? That doesn't really work, right? I mean, A up to C is no longer, A sharp up to C is not a step anymore, is it? What is it? Well, if this is A sharp, and this would be B sharp, right? We have to call it B sharp if we're going up a step, and we're not going up to B sharp. So again, I'm kind of thinking out loud just to kind of show you the process, but I would probably stick with that. Or you could you could call it, this chord, that could be considered an inversion, I suppose. If you want, if it makes it easier to think of as an inversion, you could do that. I mean, E, G, B flat, D flat is an easier spelling. But that's what you practice. All right? And then the whole thing, right? That's the whole thing. But that's the whole Barry Harris exercise in a major key. Now you can do it in the minor key. You can do it on a Mixolydian scale, on a dominant 7 chord. You can do it, a variety of ways, which I won't get into right now because I just don't have the time, and I think it's too much information even for me. But that's why I think that's one application of understanding tetrachords, because at the foundation of all of them is the fourth, and typically it's the perfect fourth. So disciplining yourself, so when you have a musical problem, you're practicing something that's difficult. You're not practicing the whole thing in that one day. You're focusing in on that one section, and you practice, in a concentrated manner, in an intense manner, and then you leave it alone. Let your subconscious deal with it. Okay? We don't really have. And here's the last thing. Here's the thing I'll leave you with. All right? As much as we'd like to think we do, we don't really have much conscious control over this stuff. That's why we have to practice. It really takes years and years and years to kind of bake into the cake, right? It's kind of why as we get older, right, we have bad short-term memory, but the long-term memory is typically better. Remember the things that happened 20 years ago. And it's the same with this. You really have to, it's like the roots of a plant. You have to just let them go down into the soil, and you can't rush that process. So you plant the seeds, and that's why it takes a certain temperament to practice, right? It takes a certain temperament. We have to just be patient and, enjoy the process and accept where we are at the moment, and know that whatever we learn is probably going to have communication and interplay with what else we learn. Just like one of the most fascinating aspects I find with trees is the root systems, and how the root systems talk to one another. And if one tree is needing water, the other trees actually give them water. It's quite amazing. Okay, that was enough stuff. So thank you again. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Francesco, for those tips that you gave me about the setting up my internet, and it makes total sense. I am one of those odd people that likes to take simple things and make them complicated sometimes. But no, my project now is I have an older 24-track recorder, and I'm going to make it relevant. So I just ordered an RME Digiface, and we'll see where that takes me. Okay, guys, take care. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Bye.